It was supposed to be just another patrol, another cold night, another silent round. But when that policeman turned the corner of an abandoned warehouse, fate was already waiting for him with its finger on the trigger. A gunshot, a muffled scream, and then ... silence. Her body fell, but her consciousness did not. What happened in the following minutes defies everything you believe about life and death. If you think you've heard near-death stories before, this one will make you rethink everything. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel. Here we reveal what many try to hide. Leave a like if you believe there's more to it than meets the eye. And share this video with someone who needs to understand that death ... is not the end. Because what this police officer saw when his heart stopped will send chills down your spine. Prepare to enter a territory where faith, pain, and purpose meet. And not everyone returns from there, but he did, and he returned changed. The sound of the gunshot still echoed when he fell. The impact on the ground was dry, brutal, and the bulletproof vest couldn't contain the damage. The blood flowed quickly hot, as if life were being drained drop by drop. The cries of his colleagues seemed distant, muffled, as if coming from underwater, and then silence. Not ordinary silence, but an absolute silence, a void without time, without space, without pain. He tried to breathe, but there was no air left. He tried to move, but there was no body left. It was in that instant that he realized something was wrong, or perhaps too right. The darkness around him wasn't frightening. It was dense yet strangely welcoming, and he didn't see it, but he felt it. He felt like he was floating, as if he had detached himself from something or from everything. Below him, a scene unfolded. Paramedics pressing on his chest, a defibrillator being prepared, and desperate eyes trying to bring him back. But he felt no fear, only peace. It was then that a presence emerged, formless, faceless. Just a consciousness, strong, unquestionable. He didn't know how, but he knew he was being observed, evaluated, and somehow welcomed. A light began to form in the distance, weak at first, but growing, pulsating, as if it had a life of its own. It didn't blind him, it called, and he went. With each meter that drew closer, more memories surfaced. His childhood, his first day at the academy, the birth of his son, the pain of loss. Everything passed before him like a silent film, but there was no judgment, only understanding. It was as if someone or something was saying, "I've seen it all, and yet, I'm still here." When he finally stepped through the light, time stopped. There was no more pain, no more doubt, only one certainty. He was no longer alone. And in that moment, he knew something sacred was about to happen, something that would change everything. But what he saw there, it wasn't the end, it was the beginning. The light wasn't just light. It was consciousness, it was presence. And as he approached, something inside him began to dissolve. Fear, guilt, pain. Everything seemed small in comparison, and he couldn't walk, he couldn't fly. It was as if he were being carried, pulled by a force that demanded no effort, only surrender. Upon crossing the threshold, time ceased to exist. There was no past, present, or future. There was only the now and eternal now. And there, at the center of it all, was he. There was no doubt. Even without a crown, without a tunic, without the features that art has tried to capture for centuries. He knew that was Jesus, but not the Jesus of churches, of sermons, of images. It was a living, intense presence, pulsating with love and authority. And in him was a gaze that pierced everything, that saw everything, and that understood everything. The policeman tried to speak, but there was no voice. He tried to kneel, but there was no body, and yet he was heard. "Why am I here?" he thought. And the answer came not as sound, but as truth. Because you needed to remember. Remember what? He didn't know what it was about. But then, images began to surface around him, not as memories, but as revelations. He saw people who had crossed his path. He saw moments when he could have done more. He saw lives he touched without realizing it, and others he let pass by. Each scene came with a feeling, pain, compassion, regret, hope. Jesus looked at him tenderly. There was no judgment, only purpose. You have protected bodies. Now you must touch souls. The phrase echoed within him like a calling, like a mission he didn't understand how nor why. But he knew it was real, more real than anything he had ever experienced. You will return, Jesus said, but not as before. And then everything began to fall apart. The light faded, the presence receded, and he felt weight, pain, gravity. He He was being pulled back into his body, into the world, into the mission. But before leaving, he heard one last sentence, one that would be etched on his soul forever. Don't tell what you saw. Show it with your life. He was still there, before him, before Jesus, but now time seemed to have stopped completely. There were no more images, no lights, no sounds. Only that gaze, a gaze that pierced layers of the soul he didn't even know existed. There was no way to lie there or to hide. Everything was exposed, and yet he felt loved. Jesus didn't speak with words. He spoke with presence, with truth. And that truth was like fire. It burned, but it purified. Do you think your mission is over? The voice echoed within him, silent yet powerful. He tried to answer, but the answer was already there, even before the question. You lived to protect, now you will live to awaken. The policeman felt a weight in his chest, not of pain, but of revelation. He saw scenes from the future, not as clear visions, but as impressions. He saw himself before lost young people, broken families, people on the brink of the abyss. And in each one, he was the bridge, the voice, the outstretched hand. But why me? He thought, I'm just an ordinary man. Jesus approached, and in that instant he felt something impossible to describe. It was as if all the love in the universe was concentrated there. That's precisely why, Jesus said. Because you know what it is to fall, and now you will know what it is to rise, but this time with purpose. Those words were not just words, they were seeds. And each one of them germinated within him, changing everything. He was no longer the same and never would be again. You will return, Jesus said, but not to continue, to begin. And then Jesus reached out his hand, not to hold him, but to mark him. And in that touch, he felt something pierce his very essence, as if a new mission had been written on his soul. Remember, it's not about what you saw, but about what you will do with it. The light began to fade and the presence receded. He felt the weight of his body returning. The pain, the cold, the sound of sirens. But now everything was different, because he wasn't returning from the end. He was returning from the beginning. And the world had no idea what was about to happen. The light began to fade slowly, as if the universe itself were closing its eyes. The warmth of the divine presence dissipated, and in its place, the cold of reality began to creep back in. He felt the weight of his body, the pain, the blood. Time, once suspended, now flowed like an uncontrolled river. The police officer was being pulled away not by choice, but by order. The mission had been given, and now he needed to return. The return was like falling from a high place, passing through layers of consciousness, of flesh, of pain. Then he heard voices, screams. He felt hands pressing on his chest, electric shocks. And then, a sound of faint but steady beep. His heart had started beating again. The police officer didn't speak. He cried. He just stared at the ambulance ceiling in a silence that spoke louder than 1,000 words. Something had changed, something profound, something that couldn't be explained, only felt. During the following days, doctors tried to understand what had happened. They called it a miracle, luck, resilience. But he knew it hadn't been luck, but purpose. The nights became different. He dreamed of lights, voices, and missions. He felt an urgency he couldn't ignore. It wasn't about patrols anymore. It was about people, about souls, about stories that needed to be told. He began to write, to visit places he had previously ignored, and to listen to those who no one listened to. And in every face, he searched for something, a spark, a sign. Because he knew that his mission was not to save the world, but to light a light in the darkness. And it all began there on that return, in that instant when death released him. Because life still needed him. Recovery was slow. His body, still marked by the violence of the ambush night, seemed to resist the new life pulsing within him. But his mind was no longer the same. Something had been planted, something that couldn't be explained by tests or diagnoses. It was as if a new consciousness had awakened. He looked at the world with different eyes. The noise of the city, the hurried faces, the unseen dramas, everything seemed to scream for attention. Not the attention of a policeman, but of someone who had seen what lies beyond death. Someone who knew that every second here matters. He asked for distance not out of fear, but for clarity. He sold his car, moved house, cut ties with everything that bound him to his old self. And he began to wander aimlessly, simply listening, observing, and feeling. He visited schools and spoke with young people who no longer believed in anything. He went into rehabilitation centers where lifeless eyes searched for a reason to go on. I went to strangers' funerals, just to be there to remember that death is not the end. And that life, even wounded, can still be sacred. He didn't preach religion. He didn't quote verses. He only recounted what he saw, what he felt, and what he heard. And most importantly, what he was called to do. Many ignored him, others ridiculed him, but there were those who wept, who trembled, who, upon hearing his story, felt something awaken within them. He wasn't seeking applause or followers. He was seeking souls, souls that, like his own, were on the brink of the abyss. And in each one he touched, he left a seed, a memory, a hope. Because he knew he hadn't returned by chance. He had returned with a purpose, a calling, a mission that can't be measured in statistics or medals, but in transformed lives. And every time the silence of the night enveloped him, he closed his eyes and remembered the light, the presence, the voice that said, "Don't tell what you saw. Show it with your life." And that's what he does every day without expecting anything in return, just living like someone who's already dead, and has come back to rekindle what still breathes. If this story touched you in any way, then you need to be here with us. Subscribe to the channel now so you don't miss the next. Stories that reveal what happens between the last breath and the first step back. Leave a like if you believe there's something beyond death, something that calls to us, transforms us, and gives us back a purpose. And comment below. Have you ever heard of or experienced something similar? Your experience could be the next story told here. If this video made you reflect, share it with someone who needs to hear this today. Here, each story is a window to the invisible. See you in the next video.